It was just another Monday morning. My 4-year-old daughter, Layla, had her purple backpack strapped tightly, her little braids bouncing with each step. I dropped her off at the neighborhood tuition center like I did every day before heading to my office in downtown DC. As a federal judge, my days were intense, but my mornings with Layla were always a calm before the storm. The tuition center was located inside our HOA-managed community clubhouse. A quiet, controlled environment, or so I thought. Around noon, I received the call that tore my world apart. The voice on the other end trembled. Judge Harmon, Layla's been shot. She's alive but hurt badly. We've called an ambulance. My heart sank. I couldn't breathe. I raced to the clubhouse, every red light a cruel joke. Sirens were blaring when I arrived. Police had cordoned off the scene. I spotted Layla being lifted into an ambulance, her legs bloodied, her tiny body wrapped in gauze. What happened? I barked at the nearest officer. He looked nervous. Ma'am, a woman from the HOA, Karen Lockridge, entered the building demanding to shut the program down. She was armed. Something triggered her. She pulled the gun. My knees buckled. Karen Lockridge. I knew her. She was the one who filed dozens of complaints about kids being too loud, running in the halls, ruining the peace of the community. Now she had shot my baby girl. I got in my car and followed the ambulance, barely able to see through my tears. My robe and courtroom faded in my mind. There was only Layla, my daughter, innocent, broken, because of a woman whose petty grievances turned violent. But Karen had made a fatal mistake. She didn't know who I was, and I was about to make sure the world never forgot what she did. Karen Lockridge wasn't just any HOA board member, she was the HOA. Self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, noise enforcer, and destroyer of joy. If a child rode a tricycle too fast on the sidewalk, Karen filed a report. If someone's grass was an inch too long, she snapped a photo and sent out a warning. Everyone in the neighborhood feared her. Most tolerated her to avoid conflict. But I had ignored her entirely. That clearly infuriated her. 2 weeks before the shooting, I received a letter in my mailbox, not even mailed, just shoved in by hand. It read, "Your daughter and her tuition group are disturbing the peace. This is a private community. We don't need children screeching all afternoon. Consider this your final warning." It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Karen's sharp, slanted cursive had been posted all over the neighborhood for years. No chalk art, no bikes on sidewalk, no birthday parties in common areas. I crumpled the letter and tossed it. Layla's class was quiet, supervised, and only 2 hours long. Besides, they were children, learning. Why should they apologize for existing? But Karen wasn't used to being ignored. Neighbors had whispered about her behavior for years. She once called the police because someone's inflatable Halloween decoration disturbed the aesthetic balance of the street. She tried to get a teenager evicted for aggressive basketball dribbling. Power wasn't a privilege to Karen, it was a weapon, and she wielded it ruthlessly. That Monday, she stormed into the tuition center unannounced. Parents later said she was ranting about permits, insurance, and fire codes. She accused the tutor of running an illegal daycare. Witnesses described her as agitated, wild-eyed, and yelling that she'd shut this place down today. When the tutor asked her to leave, she reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a firearm. The children screamed. Layla stood closest to the door. One witness said Karen pointed and shouted, "This is your fault," before pulling the trigger. 2 shots fired. One grazed the wall. The other hit Layla in both legs. Karen fled, but she didn't get far. As police pinned her down on a neighbor's lawn, she screamed, "I was protecting the neighborhood." She had no idea whose child she'd just maimed. The sterile beeping of the monitors in the emergency room echoed like a cruel reminder that this wasn't a courtroom. This wasn't a case I could dismiss or delay. This was my daughter, my Layla, lying on a hospital bed with bullet wounds in both legs. She didn't cry anymore. The morphine dulled her pain, but not mine. Her tiny hand rested in mine, limp and pale, while doctors spoke in hushed voices. Clean entry. No bone shattering. Lucky they said. Lucky? No child shot by a lunatic should be called lucky. I stared at her feet, bandaged, still. She loved ballet. She had a pink tutu waiting at home. And now I didn't know if she'd ever dance again. I wasn't Judge Valerie Harmon today. I wasn't the woman who'd sentenced gang leaders, put away corrupt senators, and dismantled drug rings. I was just a mother whose daughter had been attacked while learning her ABCs. But the judge in me wasn't gone. A nurse entered quietly, avoiding my eyes. The police are waiting outside, ma'am. They know who you are. They wanted to speak with you, but I stood up. Karen Lockridge was in custody, charged with attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and discharging a firearm in a public facility. But I knew how the system worked. Wealthy suburban women like Karen, older, clean record, tears in court got sympathy. Mental breakdown. Overwhelmed. Misunderstood. They called it out of character. But I would not let her hide behind that mask. The police captain met me outside the ICU. Judge Harmon, we are so sorry. I don't want sympathy. I want every camera pointed at her. I want every mother to know what she did. She picked up a gun and shot a child over noise complaints. He nodded stiffly. We've got her. No bail. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Good. Now, I'll make sure she never sees the outside of a gated community again. He blinked, stunned. Ma'am, you're not recusing yourself? No, I won't preside, but I will pursue every legal, public, and professional avenue to make sure justice is delivered. She shot my child. She doesn't get to walk free because her lawn was trimmed. That night, I held Layla tighter than ever, and I started preparing for the fight of my life. Karen's mugshot hit the news that evening. Disheveled hair, sunken eyes, blank expression. The headline read, Local HOA board member arrested for shooting child during dispute. For 24 hours, the nation was horrified. But by day 2, the spin began. Karen's attorney held a press conference outside the courthouse. This is a tragic misunderstanding. Ms. Lockridge has no history of violence. She was under severe emotional distress. She feared for the safety of the community. She believed she was being threatened. Threatened? By a 4-year-old? I watched from Layla's hospital room in disbelief. Karen's team painted her as a concerned citizen, overwhelmed by the noise and chaos of an unauthorized program. They showed her volunteer work, her charity donations. They even aired old clips of her handing out cookies at HOA events. Then came the letter. Anonymous, but widely circulated. It claimed the tuition center was unlicensed, hinted that I was using my federal status to bypass neighborhood regulations. The words, abuse of power, echoed through headlines. I knew where this was going. Karen's team wanted a trial by public opinion and to turn me into the villain. But I wasn't backing down. I held a press conference of my own. My voice didn't shake. This isn't about HOA regulations. This isn't about permits. This is about a woman who brought a loaded gun into a room full of toddlers and pulled the trigger. My daughter now has metal pins in her legs. She may never walk the same again. You don't get to brand that as a misunderstanding. The reporters went silent. Then one brave voice asked, Judge Harmon, will you be pushing for maximum sentencing? I looked straight into the camera. She won't get anything less. But I knew how these cases went. The public could be swayed. The system could bend. So I did what I'd never done before. I took my fight beyond the courtroom. I posted Layla's story online, photos, hospital updates, and every ugly detail of what Karen did. I made it impossible to look away. Within hours, it went viral, and the world began to take sides. Layla's story exploded online. The hashtag Justice for Layla trended across all platforms. Celebrities reposted our story. Mothers from every state flooded the comments. We stand with you. No HOA should have that kind of power. She shot a child, no excuse. Karen's team panicked. Their PR manager issued a statement. Ms. Lockridge is deeply remorseful. She prays for the child's recovery. She is receiving psychiatric evaluation. I wasn't surprised. They were setting up an insanity defense. But it didn't matter anymore, because public sympathy had shifted. News outlets aired segments on abusive HOA boards across the country. People came forward with stories of petty fines, evictions, and threats from power-hungry board members. Karen had become the face of that abuse. And Layla, the innocent victim who paid the price. I watched the coverage from Layla's bedside, stroking her curls as she slept. Every night, I read her a message from a stranger, a card from Michigan, a teddy bear from Oregon, a video message from a group of ballet students in Texas who danced for her in solidarity. Layla smiled for the first time in days. But behind the scenes, Karen's lawyer made a move. They requested house arrest with electronic monitoring until trial. They claimed Karen was fragile, threatened by the backlash, and no longer a risk. The prosecution pushed back, but the judge, an old colleague of mine, wavered. I requested a closed-door meeting. I didn't ask for favors. I reminded him of facts. She walked into a room with a gun. She aimed at a child. She pulled the trigger twice. If she weren't an old white woman from the suburbs, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He agreed. Karen remained in custody. Layla began physical therapy 2 days later. She cried through every step. Her legs, though healing, were weak and stiff. But my daughter was strong. So was I. The trial was set for 2 months out. And I made sure Karen knew. This wasn't just justice for Layla. This was a warning to every Karen in America who thought power meant impunity. The courtroom was full, press, protesters, even former HOA members Karen had wronged. She sat at the defense table in a beige cardigan, hair freshly done, wearing glasses she didn't need. The perfect image of a frail, confused woman. Her team called her a victim of stress, a defender of order, and deeply regretful. They never once called Layla by name. I sat behind the prosecution, watching every move. The jury heard from the tuition center teacher who recalled Karen bursting in, yelling about noise and bylaws. She was unhinged, he said. I told her to leave. That's when she pulled the gun. Parents gave harrowing testimonies of children screaming and hiding under desks. Then came the surveillance footage. Silent, grainy, but undeniable. Karen entering the room, arguing, reaching into her purse, raising the weapon. Layla's small frame appeared on the screen. She was holding a crayon, just a crayon. Then the flash, the recoil. Some jurors turned away. Karen's team argued she meant to scare, not shoot, that she was triggered by ongoing community stress. They even tried to shift blame onto the tuition center for poor safety protocols. I kept my expression still. Then it was my turn. As a victim's guardian, I took the stand. I told them about the letter, about the months of harassment, about the HOA meetings where Karen spoke of cleaning up the neighborhood. I told them how my daughter now cried when she heard doorbells, how she clung to me in public bathrooms, how she asked, "Will Miss Karen come back?" I showed them photos Layla before and after, smiling at ballet, then lying in a hospital bed, motionless. Finally, I said the words I had been waiting to say under oath. This was not stress. This was hate wrapped in authority. When I stepped down, the courtroom was silent. Karen refused to look at me. The prosecution rested. The defense declined to let Karen testify. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty. Attempted murder. Assault with a deadly weapon. Reckless endangerment. The courtroom burst into stunned silence. Karen stared ahead blankly, as if still convinced her HOA badge would shield her from real consequences. It didn't. Sentencing followed a week later. Karen's attorney begged for leniency. She's elderly, no prior record, a pillar of the community. I stood before the judge. She may have been a pillar, but she built that community on fear. She ruled over families like a tyrant. And when her words didn't work, she turned to violence. That's not elderly confusion. That's a choice. The judge sentenced her to 28 years in prison, no parole for the first 20. She collapsed in her chair. People clapped. Outside, cheers echoed. Layla was wheeled into the courthouse lobby by her therapist to meet me. I scooped her into my arms, ignoring the cameras, the reporters, the questions. She whispered, "Mommy, am I safe now?" "Yes, baby. Forever." Justice wasn't just served, it was felt. And Karen Lockridge? She became a symbol of what happens when hate hides behind HOA rules. Months passed. Layla's strength returned slowly. She took her first steps, shaky, painful, but proud, across the therapy room. Her tutor clapped. I cried. I returned to court, back in my robe, back behind the bench. But I was changed. I had always believed in justice. Now, I understood why it had to be relentless. I began pushing legislation, Layla's Law, a federal reform package targeting HOA overreach and requiring psychological evaluations for board members with authority over public spaces. No more unchecked power. No more Karens with guns. The bill passed its first vote with bipartisan support. Layla appeared with me on national television, holding my hand as I told our story again. Calm, direct, fierce. I was a judge before this. But now I'm a mother who watched her daughter fight to walk again. And I'll fight, so no other mother has to. That night, as I tucked Layla in, she looked at me and asked, "Can I dance again someday?" "Yes," I whispered. "You already are." And in that moment, I knew. Karen thought she could silence a child, but all she did was awaken a force louder than anything she could have imagined. Justice, and a little girl who refused to stay down.